TV and Film Blog 2. What scenes have you watched today? In today's session, as a class, we didn't watch any scenes. However, we were split into groups last week to do a scene from EastEnders. And so in today's lesson, my group watched the scene that we will be performing, which is between Max Branning, Tanya Branning, and their two daughters, Lauren and Abby. And in this scene, Abby gives her mum, and it's Valentine's Day, and Abby gives her mum and dad a Valentine's Day card, and her mum and dad are basically just bickering about how Max doesn't really like Valentine's Day, and Max is saying that he doesn't need a day of the year to prove how much he loves Tanya. And Tanya and Max clearly have relationship problems, and they talk about how he refuses to go to marriage counselling. So that's the scene from EastEnders that my group watched today. What did you notice about the scenes? What was most noticeable in the scenes? What was the genre of the scenes? So quite like last week, it was a soap opera. However, in this session, the scene that we watched was a lot more naturalistic and a lot less dramatic. So last week we did watch scenes that were very, very dramatic, like domestic abuse and death of infants, things like that. This week it was just a very, very natural, everyday scene. And that's something that I noticed. It was a very real life scene. So you had the family eating breakfast together and putting on their school uniform, you're tying their tie up, and then Tanya's sending the kids off to school and Max going off to work. So that's something that I noticed about the scenes, is that they were very, very realistic to what would happen in life every day. So it wasn't just two people talking or arguing. It wasn't over dramatized. It was brought into real life a lot more by having these little bits of like putting on the school uniform and eating the breakfast and getting the breakfast ready. So that to me made it more realistic and brought it to real life a lot more. So that's something that I noticed quite a lot. What techniques were used by the actors? So as I've just noticed, Stanislavski techniques, they didn't break the fourth wall at all. So it was very naturalistic. It even just, the sort of getting the cereal ready for the morning, or brushing your hair, sitting on their phone, eating breakfast, drinking tea. Max was tying his tie at the breakfast table. So Stanislavski techniques, really, really bringing it into real life. So obviously the directors of EastEnders have thought about what would make it naturalistic, what would make it real. So they've used a lot of that, and making sure that they don't look at the camera as well, which, as I mentioned last week, is a key in TV and film naturalistic acting. Such as soap operas. So ignoring the camera isn't there. There are four walls around you, no one can see you except for the two people who are in that room. What techniques did you learn today, and how might this be useful in TV and film acting? So looking at the little things that the actors did, such as pouring the cereal, doing their tie up, ignoring the camera, it made me feel like I knew the characters. It made me feel like what was happening was real. And so that's something that I feel I've learnt today, is adding in those little bits to make each character real, and to make the scene naturalistic to real life, because it becomes then relatable to everybody, not just people like last week who were suffering from domestic abuse or anything like that. It becomes relatable to everybody. Everyone can relate to this scene, and then you believe it a lot more. You then connect with the characters a lot more because they become real people. They don't become actors anymore. They become real people, and you get an emotional connection with them through this sort of Stanislavski natural naturalistic acting used on the camera. What was the scene you worked on? So we did work on this scene that I've just been talking about. This scene between Tanya, Max, Abby and Lauren is the scene that our group have worked on. We looked at the video for inspiration, but we decided to make it our own more than copying the video, because it would be very easy to copy EastEnders and copy the video that they did, but instead we decided to make it our own. I know that in the scene, Lauren was sat eating a breakfast. She had a bit of an attitude. She was sat eating a breakfast. We decided, because I played Lauren, so I decided, and we decided as a group, to make Lauren a lot more sarcastic. So she'd be sat on her phone. This scene was a few years ago, and so we brought it to the modern day a little bit more by having her on her phone at the breakfast table, ignoring her mum and dad, rolling her eyes, slouching. So that's kind of the interpretation that we had on Lauren. In the EastEnders scene, I know that Tanya was around the kitchen sink getting the breakfast pots ready. Max was sorting out his tie, and it was actually Lauren and Max. Not Lauren and Max, sorry, it was Lauren and Abby sat at the table. For our scene, we decided to have everybody sat at the table and have that sort of awkward silence of eating and everybody sort of acting differently. So that's the way that we interpreted it today. And we really looked at that. We looked at how to make it naturalistic in our own way, as well as using ideas from the scene that we'd been watching. What issues are in the scenes you're looking at? So in the scene that we looked at, the issue is a marriage breakdown. So Max is having an affair, and he is cheating on Tanya, and Tanya and Max are having a lot of relationship problems. And so definitely in the scene that we watched and in the scene that we've worked on, so it's the same scene, what we've worked on is looking at that tension in the room between the family. So the kids can sense that something's not right. Lauren certainly can sense that something isn't right between her mum and her dad. And Tanya, she's sort of very hopeful, and Max is brushing her off. So there's that tension because of the marriage breakdown and the lies within the marriage that come out, particularly in the scene. What were the strengths and weaknesses of your scene? The strengths of our scene, I feel that we definitely managed to build up that tension between Max and Tanya that the kids pick up on. So we definitely managed to create that awkward sort of feeling, or uncomfortable feeling within the family. So that feeling when the audience are watching it, they feel a little bit uncomfortable. We definitely managed to create that by creating a gap between the family, like there's something in the middle of them. That's the feeling that I feel we definitely managed to create. Weaknesses, I do feel that we could have looked a lot more at different ways to explore the scene. We did all sit down throughout the whole scene. That could have been explored a lot more. Maybe Max could have been pacing around, to show that he's quite guilty. Or maybe Tanya could have been running around after him to show that she's really trying and that he's not bothered. I think we could have explored a lot more with that. Instead, we did just sit down at the table, which was good for creating that tension, but we could have explored that relationship between the two characters a lot more. Choose a scene performed by someone else in the group. What did you enjoy? I really enjoyed watching Emily in this performance. I feel that she helped towards creating this tension. She kind of, her acting had that sort of very naturalistic feel about it, where you kind of look at her and you think, oh, you know, there's something going on in this family where it's quite tense, you feel a bit awkward, you feel quite uncomfortable. And Emily did that really well by the way she stood. She stood as if she was a bit uncomfortable in that room. You know, she looked down at the floor a lot. I liked that, how she looked down at the floor as if she knew that something was sort of going on. It's as if she could feel the tension. And because she was in that scene, she was in that room, the fact that you could tell she felt the tension in the room made us, as the audience, feel the tension a lot more. So I feel that she really looked into that character quite well. And she pulled off that tension, which was really important. And so I really, really enjoyed that performance.